the most important place to start is with this recent development with the Constitutional Court ruling, you could say, in favor of the kill the Boer, kill the farmer chant, in the sense that it was found by the Supreme Court of Appeal that chanting kill the Boer, kill the farmer is not hate speech. It was then taken on appeal to the Constitutional Court, who then ruled that they're not even going to hear it. Is this an accurate description, and what's your view on this?
Yeah, that is an accurate description. I got inundated with messages from colleagues expressing extreme concern that the Constitutional Court wasn't even willing to hear argument on the matter, especially given how important the matter is. It's, deals with really two fundamental rights in our Constitution, free speech on the one hand and dignity on the other. The Constitutional Court has a tendency to entertain these matters. So, for example, in the matter of Kwalani and Masuku, both of those matters went to the Constitutional Court. It seems as well that the decision reached by the Supreme Court of Appeal and also by the Equality Court is at odds with the decisions in Kwalani and Masuku. Mm-hmm. So it's very surprising that the Constitutional Court would take that stance. And I think a lot of people have always thought of that court as the last stop saloon, that no matter how bad things get in South Africa, our rights will always be protected by the Constitutional Court, that it's the sort of upper guardian of all South African citizens. And I think a lot of people suddenly thought, well, hold on a second, if certain groups don't get protection from that court, what does this mean? How much faith can we have in the court? How much trust can we have in the court? How alarmed should we be?
Yeah. And what's especially striking about this is we can talk about when is something hate speech and when should something be regarded as hate speech, because obviously free speech is very important. So one, we can look at the actual lyrics of, it's not really a song, it's more a chant. There are songs as well, but this one is just kill the Boer, kill the farmer being chanted, and the context at political rallies and so forth. But what makes this even worse is the testimony of Julius Malema when this was heard in the High Court. Tell us a bit about that. What were some of the things he said, and are you concerned that perhaps because of these things, the Constitutional Court should have taken this into account?
Yes, so part of what you've got to do when you're determining the meaning of the words of the chant, and the EFF considered a chant as well, is to look at that context. And so Julius Malema provided an enormous amount of context during his testimony. So firstly, he said, when I think of a word farmer, I think of a white person. Mm-hmm. He said that it is an instruction to Nyamazane, soldiers, to go out and to kill. He said, I am not afraid of killing. We're not afraid of dying. When the time is right, we will bomb the Union buildings. So all of that testimony gives an indication that this is a song that has a literal meaning. When I asked him to pledge that he would never call for the slaughter of white people, he refused. Mm-hmm. The judgment of the Equality Court says that the song is actually targeted at the incumbent ANC government for their failures in land reform. And I found this rather astonishing because it wasn't argued by anybody.
Yeah, it's literally not what he said. He literally said the opposite.
Yes.
Or at least he framed it differently. It was not. And I can just add that I remember in the Shoot the Boer case, the Dubula Ibunu case in 2010, 2011, Malema was then with the Youth League. It might have been when he was leaving the ANC with this friction. And what was striking was that the argument of the ANC was, we are chanting this not because of its contemporary use, but because we are commemorating the struggle that is past. So it's a song that reminds of our history. But this is particularly not what Julius Malema is saying. He's not chanting this because he's thinking back at the good old days of the struggle. He's chanting it because the struggle isn't over. And we still need to go out and, if necessary, use violence to engage in this struggle.
Yes, I mean, he says that violence is a necessary thing to decolonize, that it must be present in a revolution. The revolution is now. There's also a sense in which he's coupled that with moves to say we have to have expropriational compensation, that we must take people's land. He's called for land invasions on multiple occasions, and in a race-based manner, that the whites are thieves. They came in 1652, they confiscated our land. I asked him, do you consider whites from 350 years ago and today as being the same group? He said, yes, they are the same group of people. They carry the sins of their fathers. So you have this race-based animus. And then, of course, a large portion of that trial was really about discussing farm murders, a topic that's become so terribly taboo in South Africa. The press sort of want to either minimize it or not talk about it. And so we spent a lot of time talking about that context. Part of how we ran the trial was to model it on the Kolani trial process, which is to give intimate testimony and then broader testimony. So, we had people who had survived farm attacks talk about what that was like, what it's like when they hear kill the Boer, what sort of painful memories that triggers. We had someone who testified his wife was murdered in his bed and he was shot and paralyzed, and it sort of brings up those memories whenever he hears kill the Boer. We then had a pastor testify about the counseling that he gives all those survivors and the impact it has on the communities. You, of course, gave incredible testimony about the actual numbers, what the ratios look like. You have a sort of line that, well, it's a small number, but when you look at, your chances of being killed as a farmer versus being, anyone else in South Africa, they're dramatically high. It's 100 out of 100,000. Whereas our murder rate is 33 out of 100,000 and our intruder attack rate is only 5 out of 100,000. And all farm attacks are necessarily intruder attacks by definition. So, one of the things about the matter, I suppose, and it being televised, was that it raised a lot of awareness about a very important issue. I think it made people recognize that there is a serious problem with farm attacks. It made people recognize that the FF are a dangerous hate group. In their own words, they are revolutionaries who are called killing machines. This is again testimony from Malema during the trial. So I think there's a sense in which it's been enormously useful for making insiders understand what we're dealing with, and outsiders. Much of that footage has now been picked up by Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Marco Rubio, and I think that's been useful for shining a light on what's happening here.
Yes. So let's talk about hate speech. I don't think we need to even explain why freedom of speech is important, because I think we agree that it's very important. So if freedom of speech is so important, what's the point of having something like hate speech? Should we not just say, or we can have the argument sort of from a contextual or a philosophical perspective, but then also what does the law say? So if there is such a thing as hate speech, where's that line between freedom of speech and hate speech?
I'll give you the legal answer first, which is that our Constitution provides these very robust protections for free speech, barring 3 categories. So propaganda for war, the incitement of imminent violence, and then advocacy of hatred on the grounds of race, gender, ethnicity, and religion, and that constitutes an incitement to cause harm.
Yes.
So that last bit is the hate speech provision. It's now kind of encoded in our law in the Equality Act, which has gone through some revision because of the Kolani case. So hurtful speech, which used to be hate speech, is no longer. But the sort of simplest ones to understand are when you propagate hatred against the group, and then you call on them to be harmed by a third party. So
there's a call to action. It's identifying a group and then calling for action to be taken against them.
Yes, exactly. There's an alternative, which is that the speech itself is very harmful, and that's meant to be a higher standard than merely hurtful. But on the sort of harder test, the constitutional test, kill the Boer is about as economical as you could get. You're saying this group of people who are Afrikaners deserve death, and you should go out and you should kill them. You couldn't say it in a shorter way. And then you're chanting it at a mass rally with 90,000 people chanting along with you.
After making a speech saying all whites are criminals and they should be treated as such and all of that. Yes.